welcome to the 757 Spy Flight over on YouTube. Welcome to Orlando. Have you ever wondered why it is we talk about alligators every now and then on the Spy Flight over on Twitch? Well, believe it or not, sometimes there's alligators in these ponds that are around Orlando airports, and probably some other Florida airports too. And it looks like it is a cloudy, stormy day today here in beautiful, cloudy, stormy Florida. Hello and welcome to the 757 Spy Flight over here on YouTube. My name is Dave. Welcome to the channel. Welcome if you are new. One of the most amazing things about Microsoft Flight Simulator is the fly-by-wire A320. It is a complex airplane. It gets better literally every other day. They're pushing an update on this airplane, and it is a free update. One of the biggest questions that we also get is there an A380, you know, the big double-decker airliner? And one of those questions come in all the time. Well, the people that made this airplane, the fly-by-wire, they are making an A380, so it is very probably coming this way, maybe by this summer. We're kind of keeping an eye on that. But today we're doing a complete cold and dark flight on the A320. Now, you probably noticed at the top of the screen there, it says A20N. So this is the next generation pretty much of the A320. Neo LEAP engines, so much more fuel efficient, quieter, less polluting engines. And the airplane itself got a couple of upgrades too. But if we go and climb into the simulated cockpit here, if you take a look here, you can see it really is pretty much about the same. It is an A320 cockpit. And actually, this airplane keeps getting better and better all the time. And as I like to mention, it's free. So one of the things is we're going to do a flight in this right now. Let's talk a little bit about what you're going to see today. It is the fly-by-wires A20N. It's a complete cold and dark real-world flight. This is a flight that takes off in a couple of hours, I think. But I think it's still going to be a good flight for us to do. And did I mention it's a freeware Airbus? I am so impressed with what the people from Fly-by-Wire are doing with this airplane, and I am not sponsored by anybody, so I'm not saying that because somebody gave me money to say it. Navigraph, SimBrief, and SimToolkit Pro, that's what I'm using for add-ons. I have a payware departure airport and a freeware from FlightSim.to arrival airport. I also use a little bit of real-world flight data from FlightAware. So our flight today is Orlando to Nassau in the Bahamas. This is a really cool little flight here. Apologies, there is a winter cold here. We've had sub-zero temperatures, so apologies for the coughing and hacking. Departing off of MCO's 35 left, we may be on the 34s. I have to go and remind myself of which airports, which runways we take off on. D-Danny departure, and there is no star coming in, landing on Nassau's runway 32. Our cruise is flight level 390. Flight time, gate to gate, an hour and 25 minutes until we get to the beach, and the flight distance is just 311 nautical miles. Some stuff we're going to do today, talk a little bit about the Navigraph stack of charts, also a little bit about fuel monitoring. And as we get ready for Cross the Pond, keeping an eye on your fuel because you're going so far and not wanting to have to do aerial refueling is one of the goals. I'm also going to talk a little bit about taxiing like a pro, and that means not like you're driving a Formula One race car. And I'm also going to, this is a short hop. And if you're trying to improve your technique in the simulated cockpit, if you're trying to get, butter landings and stuff like that, shorter hops are better. A lot of people really love doing the long hauls, but really what you need to do is you need to do these shorter 300-mile hops because in a day you get more takeoffs and more landings. So let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about some of the things that I will do, and this is with just every airplane. And one of the things that I start off doing is making sure that my USB controllers are indeed connected. And so what this is I'm just going to move all of my controllers and make sure that they work. I'm going to move those rudder pedals over there. I'm going to test the hat switch, make sure I can move around like that. Let's also go ahead and we're going to move the controllers. Just make sure those work. Then we look down here. Do I have speed brakes? Yep. Do I have flaps? Yes. Do I have parking brake controls? Yes. Okay, life is good in the cockpit. Now, generally, one of the things that happens is real-world pilots, they check their controls when the airplane is up and running. Simulated pilots, I do this right now because nothing is more frustrating than get all the work done in the airplane and discover that your USB system has an attitude or something like that. And believe me, that does happen. Let's go on to the next thing. So I've already gone and done the flight planning today, and I do the flight planning. The flight planning that I do, I'm using SimBrief. Of course, we all know by now, SimBrief has a brand new interface. It really is absolutely fabulous. I've been enjoying using this quite a bit. One of the things you can do, I don't know if you know this, you can go down here to Departure Airport, and it says things are a little IFR right now, and you see the METAR. See where you can hit copy? Holy moly, this is so nice because now I can go and copy these into my flight notes. This is the best thing in the world. I'm going to make that just a little shorter there. So this is our basic METAR. You can copy, and if you keep your notes like I do in a NotePad file, this is one of the I'm so grateful that they're doing this, that we can actually copy some of this data. Here is our arrival data. So let's go and get the METAR. And again, we're not talking about an ATIS right now. This is just the METARs. So that looks good. And they'll hide those details right there. You can also come up here to the route and you can copy and paste your route. If you keep notes like I do over on NotePad, it really does make life really nice. You can also file your flight plan on VATSIM or IVAO. So that's really awesome too. I've really enjoyed using this. Now then, one of the things to do is make sure you're using the right SimBrief profile. So one of the things about this Airbus is it's a little bit different. These engines are going to handle the fuel a little bit different. Those Neo LEAP engines are pretty awesome. So because they're going to handle the fuel different, your fuel loads and all of that are different from a typical Airbus. So what you need to do is look for an A20N. Again, that's that little number that you see. Well, it's over that way. Okay. At the top of the screen. That's the designation for this airplane. And as you're setting up a profile to do your flight planning with this, that's the profile that you need to be sure to do. So you're going to get a little bit more accurate fuel. Okay, so we're good to go with that information. We've also got our latest weather. The stack of charts. So this is one of the things that I call, in the old days of aviation, when the pilots were getting ready to do the flight, you know, when the charts were made of paper, one of the things you do is you stack them up before you get out to the airplane in the order that you will need them. It just makes, you know, less chaos in the cockpit. And so one of the things that I do here at the bottom of my Navigraph is you can see I've got my charts all stacked up, and I try and order them in the order that I need them. Now you might notice that here in the lower corner here, I do not have Sync with Flight on. Now you can use Navigraph and it will automatically go and get charts based on your flight plan, and it's a little bit less work for you. I make a little bit more work because I want this to be in the order that I want it in, especially if I'm going to be in a VATSIM event. If I'm in Cross the Pond, I don't need to be hunting around for the chart. I want to know that it's there because, you know, in VATSIM, you got to move. When they tell you to move, you got to move. So we don't have time to do that. We are over here at gate 44, I believe. 44 or 42. Let's see. Go out. This, again, I believe is a payware that I got. And no, we are at gate 42. Welcome to gate 42 at Orlando Airport. It even says so right above the jetway. How about that? Okay, so we're at gate 42. We are going to be taking off on, it says we're departing off of runway 35 left. So one of the reasons that they might be having us going over here and taking off on this one as opposed to the closer runways here is because we're actually going east. So maybe we'll taxi over to 35 left. Our departure is the D. Danny departure. And as you can see, it's just a real nice departure. After takeoff, we're going to go to Goa and then Miggs and then Lapu, come on down to UK and then D. Danny. And then our transition for today is going to be J-Pod. And also one of the things that they're doing on VATSIM, they've been doing this for a while, is when you get your clearance, they're just saying climb via the SID, and they're not giving you a top altitude. If they're not giving you a top altitude, chances are a top altitude is listed on the chart, and the VATSIM controllers expect you to go and look at that number. So 7,000 feet is going to be our top of climb before air traffic control clears us higher. RNAV approach, we actually do not have a star coming in today. So we're doing an RNAV approach coming into runway 32, and what we're going to do is we're going to look for either the Hindo or the Zooten transition. So let's go over here and just have a look at how we're coming on in here. So there's Hanks. I think we want, so basically we're coming in from the north here. So on the RNAV, I think we want the Zooten transition. So this is why you look at your charts before you go and head out to the airplane. So Zooten transition to runway 32. We're going to look over here, and there's runway 32. Looks like we've got a high speed. Well, no, it's not a high speed here. So we can get the Echo taxiway off here. Come on into the apron. We've got all sorts of really nice gates to go to. And again, the airport that we're coming to is a freeware airport that I found just today on flightsim.to. So it'll be interesting to see how all this works. So coming over here, you may have noticed, maybe over on Twitter and stuff like that, that there's some really nice ground charts that have suddenly appeared magically, and they're really look good. Well, this is clearly not it. This is the Jepson chart. So get out of this map, and then what we're going to do is let's go and zoom back out and come on up here, and let's go into MCO. And we'll zoom in, zoom in. Oh, this is where you find the really cool chart. And you see it's got gate numbers, 44, 40. It's also got taxiway markings. So we're going to push back, come out at Echo 1. We'll take Foxtrot, go over the bridge. At Foxtrot, we'll come on down here. This is what? Hotel? Is that Golf Hotel? I think so. No, this is Golf. We'll take Golf down to Hotel 10 and depart. So this is where you go and find the incredibly new, great looking chart. You just have to zoom in. I have to admit, I did go hunting around a little bit. I said, oh, that's a cool chart. Where are these charts? And I finally found them by zooming in. The other thing that you can do is, so here we are here. You can see the, over on the left here, there's the little arrow. That's how you put your flight, have Navigraph follow your airplane. And then if you click the target below it, it's going to center it in your screen. And that's really helpful too. And when I'm taxiing, I like to have this right in front of me, just off to the side. Even if I know the airport, if I'm going to go to a busy airport, it's just really nice to have that little moving airplane and show me the taxiways. Also, the real pilots, I've noticed, a lot of the real world fly along in the cockpit videos that you see here on YouTube. I hear them talking about briefing the taxi route like we just did a second ago. So that's a good thing to do if you've got time, especially if you're waiting and cross the pond and you're waiting for try and brief yourself on your taxi route. That's going to just make your day a little bit nicer. I've also been playing around with GSX here. So one of the things we can do is we can go to GSX. I could request a jetway. And it's going to go and give us all sorts of airports. I'm going to do Alliance Ground. And while we wait for the jetway to come out, we'll turn the sound on the SAM and enjoy some in-flight beverage. And there is our nice little jetway there. Very cool. And this is looking good. So we're here in the cockpit. The door is open. The first thing that I do is come on over and I turn on my electronic flight bag. Just click the center of the iPad. That's all you got to do here. Because I've filed with SimBrief, and because over here in the settings I included my SimBrief user ID, we can go and import the SimBrief data. There's the flight, and look at this, it even gave you the latest weather too. So that's pretty awesome. That's really nice to be able to use. Let's come on over here to the next page. This is the little clipboard, and this is the flight plan. So this is the PDF file that you can get over at SimBrief, and this is it. This gives me all of my fuel planning that I need, which is really awesome too. Now we can go to the truck. We have the forward door is open. It is not showing the jet bridge is being open right now. I am going to go ahead and connect the ground power cart. And I guess if we go out here and have a look, we might see a ground power cart moving around. Maybe not. Don't know. So let's see. Do we have, is that showing up here? It says ground power is yellow. I don't know if it's going to eventually turn green. It does indicate that we have ground power up here. It could be that this is just visual. I don't know. Well, let's experiment. Let's click ground power and turn it off. And it's just visual. So it still shows us as having external power on. And at this point in time, it's time to turn power on the airplane. And you know, this is an Airbus. So the first thing we're going to do is come up here, battery 1, battery 2. And I don't know if you saw it, but what is so incredible about this airplane is take a look at the external power button here. Let's see if I can zoom in a little closer here. So there's the external power button here. This is some of the modeling that they have done on a freeware airplane. So here's my mouse pointer. Watch what happens when I turn on external power. You're going to notice the button push in and stay there. Wow, did you see it go in? If you look here at the battery buttons, these buttons are actually pushed and they're in. So they've actually modeled that too, which I just, you know, again, amazing modeling is coming out of the people from Fly-by-Wire. And I will say again, I'm not sponsored by it. I'm genuinely impressed with what it is that they're doing. Time to turn up the levels on the LCDs here. And I usually turn these up to about 10 o'clock during the day. You can turn these up way too much to the point that you really can't even see the data that shows up on them. So right now, the McDo's are both tied together. I'm actually getting to the point in my big jet planes that I like to have different bits of data on my different McDo's. Uh-oh, the computers are coming alive. We didn't touch anything, but that's the part of the power up on the Airbus. Right now they are tied together. Eventually they are going to release McDo version 2.0 or something like that coming our way. So over here you're going to be able to run separate bits of data on the McDo, and I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, so first step in our process, we're going to go to the ATSU system. Air Traffic Services Unit is what that stands for. The next thing we're going to do is go to AOC, Airline Operations Control Menu. And that's what they have in the real airplane. And we're going to go to Init, and they're going to init a data request. And that goes to SimBrief and gets the flight plan. Okay, GPS primary is lost. We know that. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. So fuel on board, estimated time en route, all of that's looking pretty good. Let's go back to the air operations menu. We can also request a weather. I think we've already got the weather over here in the electronic flight bag, so I'm kind of good with this. Let's go ahead and do fueling. Fueling's the next best thing, big thing. So I'm going to hit the fuel button. And over here you can see that there is a little cloud and there's a down arrow. So I'm going to click the little cloud and the down arrow. And that's going to be the fuel that we need. And if you look at your flight plan, it says we need 4.6. So 466 is what it says we need. There it is. So 4669 kg of fuel. And I'm going to go to fast. And let's hit the arrow. And it's now refueling or setting the fuel level in your airplane, which is really cool. Okay, one of the things I've forgotten to do is when you go and start an Airbus, you turn on the nav and logo lights. This one is a simple on or off button. The real Airbus has two separate systems, 1 and 2. They're identical, and so I will go and use those. I had a one of the landing lights was not retracted. I must have clicked that. Okay, so all of this is looking good, and this is really all the information that we need there. So I'm going to go to McDo menu and FMGC. We'll check our navigations data. We're good for 23 February to 22 March, so we are up to date. Let's do init, and we have to do another init request here. And this is going to go and uplink the flight plan into the actual flight management computer. And all of that is looking good. And the uplink is good. Now that that uplink is there and the McDo knows that we're at MCO Airport, it's time to kind of come up here. And we're going to go and do the ADIRS system. So on the ADIRS system here, you do one first. And in the other Airbus, it goes and does fault, and then up here it says on battery. It takes a little bit different here. I'm not sure which one is the way to do it. I usually like to see that the on battery light goes on and off. And what I believe that is the ADIRS system is also connected to your onboard batteries. In case you have a complete power failure and you don't know, at least the ADIRS is connected to the battery, so at least you know where you are. And I think that's what the point is of all of that. And so now we'll do IR3. While we're waiting for that, we can do fire tests. There's engine number 1. There's engine number 2. And then be careful where you push here. You see the hand is over here. That little hand, that is going to open up the fire, hit the fire bottle button. You want the little pointer. Now you still, if you use the hand, it's going to open it up. You still haven't pushed it, but just be careful on that one. And now we got the system coming up. So we've done, let's do IRS and it. And we'll align on our reference position and confirm. We'll return and everything else is good. Let's see if we can go and get wind data. Now, to get an awful lot of the wind data and the data that comes into the airplane, one of the things you need to have running is a little application that comes with this airplane. And I don't know if you've seen the fly-by-wire downloader lately, but the fly-by-wire downloader, if you look over here, here's the downloader. You see where it says SimBridge? SimBridge is basically a further connection between your airplane and external data. And you need to go and have SimBridge running in the background. And I usually start that up. By the way, if you're one of the people that's really excited about an A380 coming, you can see they already have a link here for the A380. Can't click on it yet, but that is the link. Also, if you take a look down here at the little radar scope, this is FSLTL. This is model matching for VATSIM. And it's free, it's easy to use, and I really like it. So there you go. Now we've got our wind data, and this is for the climb. I believe we need to go, and on this one we have to request wind data for climb, cruise, and descent. So I'm hitting each one and doing all of these numbers here. It's the way that at least it's working for me. I don't know if that's the way it works, but that's the way it's been working for me. We're at a U.S. airport because of the big, bad, horrible pandemic. I think airlines are still required to have the APU up and running and all the ventilation systems going. I think that they could also tie into a ground ventilation system, but they have to have the ventilation systems going at, warp factor 10. And you can see the APU is starting to start up here. And we can even hear the APU starting up too. So we get a little bit of fun APU action here, which is always a good time. How's our fueling done? Fueling's done. We've got 4665. Our fuel is in the cockpit. Let's go to the payload page. And on the payload page, it's the same thing. We're going to see this down arrow. This is going to get passengers, cargo, and everything. So click the down arrow. And what that is our load of passengers at our 0 fuel weight. And if you look over on your flight plan that you got, the PDF flight plan here, you should be able to see a 0 fuel weight of 56228. And let's come over here, and it is going to load 56228. Isn't that amazing? Cool. And to actually do this load and start welcoming the passengers on board, you click the 2 little arrows. And that begins the boarding process. So, and you'll also hear some sounds. So you'll hear sounds of passengers, and I think this airplane even has some boarding music for us, so that we can geek out with some boarding music too. Okay, we do have an APU up and running. I'm going to turn on the APU bleed. That's going to get ventilation to the airplane, and I think you turn the aft cabin down about 3 clicks. There's more people in the aft cabin, make it a little bit cooler. Let's turn on crew supply of oxygen. I believe they also do ground control over here. This is the flight recorder, and you hit ground control so that it's recording you while you're on the ground. And everything else is coming together here. Our airplane is coming to life. So if we were on VATSIM, now would be a great time to get the clearance, and we can roger that, and now it's the Victor, the flight path, the flight plan. And that is far too much cheesy airplane jokes there. Let's do our departure. We know from our flight plan that we are going to depart off of 3-5 left. So ILS 3-5 left. It says that on the departure. That lets you know that there's an ILS in case you're coming back into land. You have to land because of an engine problem. D-Danny is our departure, and we are going out on the J-Pod. Transition, and insert that into your flight plan. There it is, all nicely done. And then the music started. Okay, there's J-Pod. After J-Pod, now it's time to come on into, there's Junip. So this is a discrepancy that we can delete. So that was, J-Pod was the end of the SID, and now we're into our actual flight plan. And then there's Hanks, there's Mellon. Okay, and ZQA, that's going to take us right over the runway. So let's go into MYNN. Oh, GPS primary is done. Right on. Let's do MYNN and our arrival. We are expecting the RNAV for runway 32. RNAV, runway 32. You could also use a VOR. There is no stars coming in, but we may need to do a VIA. And I thought we would do... I don't remember. We even briefed it earlier, but I don't remember. But guess what? The real pilots, they're going to come and look at the chart and just make sure. And you can see we were going to do the Zooten transition. That's another reason to have your charts ready to go.
From the flight deck, on behalf of myself, your captain, the first officer, and cabin crew, I'd like to take this time to welcome you aboard our flight. We're just wrapping up some paperwork up front here and waiting to see final numbers from the ground crew, then we'll be on our way. Flight attendants will be coming through the cabin shortly with a very important safety briefing. We do ask that you give them your full, undivided attention as they review the safety operations of this Airbus aircraft. We do appreciate your business having you aboard this flight. If there's anything we do to make your flight any more enjoyable, please don't hesitate to ask. Welcome aboard.
Okay, I'm making fun of the announcement and stuff like that, but you can turn them off if you find it annoying. I was just having fun, being mocking, and so there you go. Okay, so we've got our VIA is all set up here. Let's go and insert that into the flight plan and back into flight plan. There is everything. Now then, there is going to be a route discontinuity in here. So this one has us basically going over the VOR, and I don't think we're going to be going over the VOR. So after Hanks, it's got Mello, Curray, and ZQA, and then Zooten. I think that that's going to cause a couple of problems here, especially as we come on in. So we may need to go and do some editing on the flight plan there. I think that happens on occasion, but we'll keep going. We could go over here, turn off the flight following for a second, and just come on over. And we could look at our route. And again, these are things that it's really just a good idea. So Hanks and Mellon, there's Curray and ZQA. So that's the VOR right over the airport. So after Curray, we really should go and direct to Zooten. So that VOR is not something we need. We could actually delete this one and then close the discontinuity, and that's going to be a little bit more direct. Now, the real pilots, I think they're required to actually leave all of this in until otherwise directed. I don't know. Somebody was telling me in chat over on Twitch that sometimes when I do surgery like this, It's not the thing that the real pilots will do. But I find it a little easier, especially because when we're coming in on approach, we're busier with ATC. We're also one person in a simulated cockpit that's meant for two people. So I tend to do a few things like this on the ground when I'm bored, because it helps my day move a little bit faster. Okay, all of this is looking good. Let's go on over to the init page, and we're going to do init page B. Passengers are aboard, life is good. So in init page B, the first thing we need is our zero fuel weight, which is 56228, which is going to be 56.2. Put in the slash. Now our center of gravity is going to be 33.3. So 33.3. And that goes in there. Perfect. Now then we can kind of come up here again, and I think all of this is good. Passengers are aboard. So for block fuel, what I usually do is I will look up here and actually look at what's on the actual gas gauge of the airplane. Our fuel on board is 4660. That translates to 4.6. And that goes right in there. And now it's going to do a little bit of math for us. Speaking of math, on this airplane, we don't have takeoff calculators set for this airplane yet. They are working on it, and there's a couple of things that I use. The first thing I use is a little application called SimSmart. And SimSmart was like a $5 app that I got online. And I've only paid for it once. And SimSmart works really good for giving us weather information and speeds for takeoff. Now, it doesn't do the trim as well. So one of the things that I've also done is I found a table here of trim settings. I don't know if this is for a Neo. Okay, so we're kind of doing some guesstimating here. But I think eventually we're going to get much better data than I've got right now. So we can go ahead and we can go and put with SimSmart KMCO. There is our departure airport, and it's going to go out to the internet, and it's going to grab your airport data. And we'll have to wait. Waiting. Retrieving airport data. Now it's done. What runway are we going off of? We are going off of 35. I've already forgotten. Look at the flight plan, 35 left. So 35 left, and now let's go ahead and grab the METAR. Hey, there's the METAR. It's dry right now. Anti-ice is not going to be needed, so off. Takeoff weight. Where are we going to get that? It's right down here, and it's the TOW. Takeoff weight is 60.6. So let's go ahead and we'll put this in here, 60.6. And the next thing to do is look at the center of gravity, and it says 33.3. So center of gravity, it's either standard, equal to or less than 27, or forward, we're going to be forward. Takeoff thrust, we are of course going to be flexing. Climb thrust, I'm going to do config flaps 1 plus F, and I'm leaving my air conditioning on because I care about the comfort of my passengers. Just call me Captain Sarcastic. Okay, so we've got all of this in there. Let's go ahead and I'm going to hit calculate. And this is going to go and give us V speeds, thrust reduction and acceleration. It gave us a flex temperature, everything we've got that we need. Now then, the one thing it didn't give me was a trim setting for takeoff. So this is where I'm going and using this old chart that I don't think is correct for this airplane. And I do have a copy of that chart over on my Discord page if you would like it. You just look for checklists and you'll be able to find it there. So our center of gravity is 33.3. So if we look over here, there is 33.3. That gives us a trim setting down 1.0. All right, I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to, on my top line, DN 1.0 because my memory is getting terrible. So I'm going to write that down. Anyway, that's how I'm going to go and find this. If you don't want to go and use that graph, there is another way that you can do this. So if you look over here on the trim wheel, if you see there is trim settings down here for this airplane. It's kind of hard to see, but there's trim settings. Now if we're supposed to be at 33.3, well, actually, you can see my graph is pretty good. 33.3 is down 1.0. So that's another way, and you don't have to go and get my goofy graph and stuff, something like that. You just guesstimate, okay, we're going to be down 1.0. So that's another way that you can go ahead and do that. Our data is good here. Now let's go to the perf page, and we're going to do our performance information. So flaps are going to be 1. We know that the trim is going to be down 1.0. We're going to put that in there. Our flex temperature, thanks to SimSmart, is going to be 68 degrees. So 68 degrees is next. And that goes in there. And V speeds. So our V speeds are going to be 136, 136, and 138. So 136, 136, and 138. Our transition altitude is 18,000 feet. Thrust reduction and acceleration. So every airport is different, and there are several different ways to look this up. A lot of the calculators are starting to give us this information. They're all essentially the same. 1087. So let's just go ahead and what do we have? 1590. So 1087. That's thrust reduction. It's also acceleration. 1087. And that can go in there. Now, when you put it in there, it doesn't immediately pop up. You have to wait a while. So don't panic if it doesn't do anything. And then generally for engine out acceleration, it's the same. But again, every airport's going to be different. So we'll wait and see if we can pop that in there too. And it rounds it up to 1090. And everything's right. Everything's ready to go. So let's come on outside the airplane. And the passengers are aboard. It's time to lose the jetway. So we're going to get GSX to help us out here. And let's operate the jetway. And it should roll back our jetway for us. There goes the jetway. Cool. Let's also go back while there's our jetway. Now let's go to GSX. And we are going to prepare for pushback and departure. And it's going to make some noise while that's going on. I'm going to go ahead and make sure my APU is up. I'm going to do external power off. This is when I turn on my fuel pumps. I have been terribly negligent about remembering to do fuel pumps.
Hello, Captain. We're ready for pushback.
Well, cool. We're ready to be pushed back. Let's come on over here. I've neglected to turn on my no smoking for fueling. I'm going to turn on seatbelts. I'm going to arm my emergency exit lights. And all of this is looking good. We're getting ready to move, so beacon is going to go on. And if we look over here,
arm doors and cross-check.
Everything is pretty much clear here. Let's go to services, and services are clear too. So up here, I'm going to go to the top, and all of this is good too. Our altimeter is 3004, so we should go 3004 in the altimeter. 3004. There we go. And this one actually does the co-pilot. I am going to do, what do we want to do? Nose right or tail left? I want to do nose left, tail right.
Locking gear.
Okay, let's do the backup altimeter. 3004. So we got to do that one. And we haven't set anything up here like our initial cruise altitude because my memory is starting to fail me. We're going to come over to D Danny And D. Danny reminds me that our top altitude is 7,000 feet. So keeping your charts handy helps. And everything is looking good so far.
Release parking brakes.
I think we're ready to go. We're making the announcements here. We've got some nice views. They do not model the whole cabin in this airplane. Cabin views are a little funky right now. Don't worry, they'll fix that one. So let's go ahead and look down here. I'm using the Thrustmaster controls. Parking brake is off.
All engines clear. Start at will.
And here we go. We are finally on our way back. Okay, while this is going on, we could go and start the engines. Let's go over here to the starter. And the knob works. And engine number 1. And engine number 1 is starting. You can kind of see in the box. Oh my gosh, we've got the hydraulic PTUs barking at us. Oh, listen to that angry dog. Oh, all right. So here's the thing about this airplane. Technically, in a real Airbus A320, apparently the pilots cannot hear the hydraulic PTU pump. All right. The thing about sim pilots, we kind of want to hear the dogs barking at us. So you have an option to turn off the hydraulic, turn it on and off for the cockpit. So this airplane lets you do that. And here comes our start. Looking good. And they're even starting to push the tail around. This is one of the things that GSX does, is it puts you right on your taxi line. So amazing. And this is looking pretty good.
Set parking brakes.
Parking brakes are set.
Waiting your confirmation for good engine start.
Okay, and we have got a good engine start on this first one. So we're going to come up and we're going to go to GSX, hit GSX, and I'm going to say confirm engine start.
Cockpit to ground. We have a good engine start.
Okay, from here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the GSX button again and unhighlight it. That way it's not expecting clicks or anything from me. And we got a good start on engine number 1. I'm going to go ahead and start engine 2. Let's go ahead and get that going. If it were a little bit further of a taxi, we would be doing a 1-engine taxi. I don't think it's going to be that far. So looking here, if you're looking around the airplane wanting to know about your engine start, on N2, there's going to be a little gray box that goes around that. That's a good indicator for you that the start sequence is going. And if we look up here, we're going to see N1 going up.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass pin removed.
There goes our tow truck.
Left is clear. Right is clear.
Okay, and as we look down here, I have failed to squawk mode Charlie on the taxiways. We're not on VATSIM, but I do try and make a point of doing that, because every place you go, they want you squawking mode Charlie. And on this, that means Terra, and turn this, I believe, straight up to auto is what you need to do. Okay, and as we look over here, you can see the ground crew guy just held up the gear pin. Now the next thing is going to hold it up again and wave.
Please prepare for takeoff.
At some airlines, that is called the salute and release from guidance. And at that point in time, you are clear to move the airplane. And they make a really big deal of the salute and release from guidance thing. Okay? And everything's looking good up here. So all up, I forgot a fuel pump. Bad pilot. We do have APU bleed, the main engine bleed, so I'm going to turn off the APU bleed. I'm going to make sure my engine generator lights are out too, and we can shut down the APU. Now then, we're going to come down here and do, the real pilots are going to do their control checks now. So move your elevator, you move it all the way to one extreme and then let it go and make sure it comes back to normal. That's the way they'll do that in the real airplane. And then the rudder. And you can see my reminder that my trim is down 1.0. I'm now setting my trim, and trim is down too. If it were snowing outside, I would leave my flaps up till we get closer to the runway. Let's also go ahead and get the starter back to normal. I've been forgetting that lately. And we can also lock the cockpit door. And this is looking pretty good. Flaps are going out. I think we're ready. Auto brakes go to max. Let's see. Let's go and arm our speed brakes. We need to do a cabin call, so hit the all call button. There is our cabin call there, and then a takeoff config check. And the ECAM checklist is green. The only thing to do is predictive wind shear. We're going to pop that on right now. And now all is good to go. So we can look up here and do nose light. Parking brakes are off. And we're ready to go. We're going to follow the plan that we had when we did started talking about the taxi. So come on over here again. Hit the little arrow. And then go ahead and zoom in. And at that point in time, we can go ahead and just use that to monitor us. Once you get the Airbus rolling, it will just do a very, very nice thrust idle taxi. Now this, I think you use the tiller a little bit more in an Airbus, which is the twist stick for me. And we're just following that plan. By getting everything done the way we did. Okay, got a couple of turns to come up here. We're going a little fast. By getting it all done, you can concentrate on your taxi here. Going around a 90-degree turn, I like to be going about 10 knots. You can speed it up a little bit more, but about 10 knots for these 90-degree turns. And how do you know your speed? It says ground speed right there. And you can see it. The hard part is, of course, you know, when you go and zoom in to check something like that, you're going to turn a little bit faster. So, and now we can go ahead and let it speed up just a bit. So all of this is good. Our checklists are good. And if you watch the real world pilot videos here on YouTube, you'll see they're not doing anything but taxiing the airplane at this point in time. They may change the frequency, but they're both looking out. Looking outside the airplane to make sure that they're not going to strike a wing tip. Every now and then, you know, as I mentioned over on the Spy Flight on Twitch, we have fun, you know, talking, you know, alligators. Well, there was a real world Mad Dog pilot that came into chat one day and told the story about how they felt this bump under the airplane as they were taxiing here at Orlando. And as it turned out, they ran over the tail of an alligator that was clearly not afraid of the really big jet making all sorts of noise. Sort of like, hey, I'm an alligator. This is Florida. I have the right of way. So they did feel the bumps. So yeah, a real world pilot came in and confirmed to me, yes, they do actually have alligators here. Going over the bridge. So this is the bridge goes over the highway that goes into the airport. And we are getting ready to come up over here to our next taxiway. And then we make a right turn, a left turn, and it's flying time. This airport is definitely a little bit lumpy. Not every airport is perfectly level and straight. I would think that Orlando probably isn't quite as lumpy as this. I've actually never been to the real world, so I don't know. Okay, we're going a little fast, and it's about time for us to make a turn to the right. Again, I want about 10, yeah, we were going about 20 knots. So, speed down a little bit here. There's 13. 13's probably okay. And so now we're coming up on this taxiway. And look over there. Anybody coming? No. So we'll make our turn. And then I like to look out the side as we make the turn. As we come around, go ahead and move the view back up front. The views that I'm using, everything is on the number pad for looking around. You can also use this key. You can also use the hat switch. I also like to have a return to the main view button set on my stick, so I can always, even if I've got my one hand on the throttle and one hand on the stick, even if I'm looking around over here, I can always go and come back to my main view. That's just a key thing to do. As we get a little closer to the runway, and once I'm 100% sure everything is going good, I'm going to go ahead and zoom this out a little bit for my departure. And again, I keep that over on the other screen just right off to the side. It's such a valuable tool. As we approach the runway, I'll look up here, do an additional cabin call. This is my flight attendants prepare for takeoff call. And everything else is really pretty good at the moment. See, if we want to, we could come down here and I could do a little bit of backlighting on my engine instruments there. It just makes the labels pop out a little bit better. I also happen to think the throttle and the lights on the throttle on the Airbus A320, that's like probably one of the coolest lighting. That's just really, I don't know. Maybe I'm too nerdy about those things, but I just think, wow, that looks pretty awesome. Okay, getting ready to do another one of those 90-degree turns here. We're at 24 knots of ground speed at the moment. A little bit fast for a turn. The current time on the airplane is, it's 1400 Zulu. So we are 25 minutes late from my scheduled departure time. Spent a lot of time yapping ahead of this flight about certain things, but one of the things to do, especially with Cross the Pond coming up, is ensure that you've got an eye on your departure time. That is a critical thing because they move so many airplanes. They really do expect you to depart on time and be ready. And there it is, 3-5 left. I think we can go. Let's go ahead and do the strobes. And I'm going to go ahead and drop the landing lights. I'm not turning the landing lights on, but I am dropping them down out of the bottom of the airplane, so they'll be ready to go. We've done all of our checks. Okay, the ECAM checklist is green. It's flying time. After departure, we make a turn to the right. And as we roll around here, just gently putting ourselves on the center line. And as you could see, really we didn't, go crazy. It's easy to over-control these simulated airplanes, but if you don't, life is so much nicer. Landing lights and flying time. So I usually go and I move my throttles up to just below the 5 on the engine instruments here. So I'm looking at these. Are the engine instruments good? Are the engines stable? They are. So now let's go ahead and do manual flex. SRS and runway are set. Auto thrust is blue. Those are those annunciations at the top. Annunciations, man, there's a big word for this early in the morning. 100 knots. The one thing I hope that they add to this airplane is just default airspeed callouts. V1 and rotate. It helps so much. V1, rotate. Positive rate of climb, gear. And out we go. And at this point, I'm going to spend most of my time watching watching my flight directors at this point. Be ready to have ATC kick you over to departure. Okay, now it says lever climb. Thrust climb. And there's our turn. See how all of this happens at the same time? Gentle turn on the jetliners. And then if you're really super duper busy and you've got your departure set, if you've got your flight directors centered up, AP. And that will help you, especially if you're in a very, very busy VATSIM events type of a deal, to handle your departure. Up, there's slats. So flaps are going to go up. There goes flaps. When we do flaps, this is usually when I try to remind myself to disarm the speed brakes. And there's our speed coming up. Direct to GOEM. ATC is called. Climb and maintain 17,000 is usually what we get about now. There's 17,000 feet. And we are up above the clouds. And we've got beautiful sunshine as we head to the beach. Obviously, since do my flight simming and I really do like flying to a beach. Seriously. By the water, what could be better? ATC is called. Climb and maintain 25,000. Sometimes it happens that fast. We'll just keep the climb going. Now, we do have a speed altitude constraint at MiGs below 5,000 feet. The airplane will handle that. It's important to follow, especially the at or below altitudes, especially at a big airport. This is to keep us below arriving traffic. One day I did not follow that constraint, and I was blasting out of London City Airport, and all of a sudden the Heathrow controller says, "You are in the way," because I was not maintaining, and it really was an important lesson that day. Okay, so at or below, now it's above 7,000 feet at Lapu. I'm going to go ahead and click the map out a bit here. That's good. So our climb continues. Everything's looking good here. Nothing is flashing, beeping, or blinking. So we haven't caused a problem yet. 6,000 feet. How about that? Now, as we're coming on out here, one of the things that I will regularly do is I will also hit the fuel prediction button. I want to see that EFOB button, estimated fuel on board, when we land at Nassau, at the Bahamas. So, this number is this number here on your flight plan. It's the one at the bottom. 1.9 is essentially what we need to have in the tank for final reserve and alternate fuel. And what that is that number is these three numbers added together. So, fuel to get to our alternate is 1.86. Final reserve is our 30 minutes of fuel, and then contingency is 15 minutes. Those three numbers add up to final reserve and alternate 1.9. I want to see this number stay above that. If that number is above that, then all is right with the world, and we're not going to run out of gas. If it starts to drop below that, that means we've got a problem. Now then, in some airplanes like the Anybuilds A310, that number starts going down if you're cruising below your optimum flight level. And the McDo in the airplane over here on performance, it's going to go and give us on the cruise page, I believe, does this give us our optimum? I don't see it in this one. It's probably not there yet, but eventually it'll be there, your optimum flight level. That's really what you want to be. So on Cross the Pond, if you're like me, I'm flying the A310 on Cross the Pond. I want to be close to that optimum flight level. And if I'm at flight level 350 and my optimum flight level is 390, I want to get up to 37 or 39. And so usually SimBrief will help you plan, will plan your flight at optimum too. That way you have enough gas. If you stay too low, you're going to find that that gas gauge starts going down, 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 and you will not make it across the Atlantic. So here we are at 10,000 feet, landing lights. I'm also going to do my nose light and cabin call. That's 10,000 feet. Flight attendants are going to get on the PA and say, hey, seatbelt sign's still on. No, you can't go to the bathroom when the seatbelt sign is on. Let's go ahead and we're going to pop the map out even more. And the airplane is good. We can come over here, and this is going to show us our progress. This is also going to give us, I believe, the latest METAR data, which is real, I mean, just right there. Now, the fly-by-wire does that too. The fly-by-wire will give you the latest METAR data too. This is so nicely designed. I really like what they're doing with this. Now, I use GSX for pushback. This airplane does have a pushback truck on board too, its own, and it's actually really pretty cool. So you actually have a map, and it shows your airplane, so you can do a pretty much precision pushback and not have to look outside the airplane. It's all right there. And out we go. How about that? If you're wondering, this was my favorite United livery. So it's the Tulip. I like this one. They shouldn't have fixed it. But so I usually will fly a vintage livery. My across the pond airplane will be the A310. United didn't fly A310, so I'll be flying Pan Am. They did fly A310s. 18,000 feet. The Airbus will flash QNH at you. It is so handy that they do that. And it's set it for the co-pilot. I'm going to look down here and hit the standard button for my backup altimeter. I wish Boeing would do that too, that it would tell me that. Now, STD over here, it's boxed in yellow. I'm not sure. I think I may have done something wrong. I haven't noticed that before. So I need to read some flight manuals to discover if having it boxed in yellow like that means I did something wrong. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. So we're still in climb. All is right with the world. Fuel isn't running out. Engines aren't on fire. And we are about ready to exit the coast. So we're exiting the Florida coast here. Oh, what a real world adventure this would be, to get to do this. ATC call, climb maintain flight level 390. There's our final cruise. So it was showing our top of climb. Let's go ahead. I usually leave the Airbus on 80 miles, passing 21,000 feet. And to flight level 390, it's 110 miles. Now this is where I would like to have the other McDo available, but we only have one right now because I would have flight plan over on the other one, and what this one tells me is we're 287 miles away from Nassau, and it shows that we're going to be landing at 1454 Zulu. Right now it is 1411 Zulu. So really kind of cool that it gives you that information. Now, as a part of your flight plan, you can also go and take a look on page 3. There is your schedule. And again, it sounds incredibly nerdy to hear me talk about the schedule, but these are numbers that you're going to need to keep track of for Cross the Pond. And there's also a pre-cross the pond that's coming up. At the time that I'm recording the video, it's coming up, I believe, in about a week and a half. So we were supposed to be off the ground by 1355 Zulu. We were off the ground about then. So, well, we pushed back from the gate awfully late. But we were off at about 1355. We are supposed to be landing at 1452. And according to the flight plan, we're supposed to be parked at the gate at 1500 Zulu. So I think that the flight plan builds a little bit of extra time in for us. So we may have departed late, but I think we're going to be on time. 25,000 feet. This is usually my personal. This is if there is no turbulence or anything. I'm going to go over here and do seatbelts. I will never forget the one traumatic experience that I had of having ordered a Venti instead of a Grande at the airport. There was a lot of turbulence that day. They did not turn off the seatbelt sign for a long time, and that's very uncomfortable. So I try to be nice about my seatbelt signs. By the way, that is a mistake that I've only made once. You learn very quickly those lessons. Okay, we have a top of climb hockey stick. The term hockey stick was I first heard hockey stick in the Captain Mike Ray book, Airbus A320 simulator check ride manual that Captain Ray, a former United Airlines captain, writes. So he is a retired Boeing pilot and decided to write one of his He's done a bunch of these check ride manuals for real world pilots trying to pass their check ride. And so he ends up referring to the top of climb and top of descent indicators on the map on an Airbus as a hockey stick. I thought that was pretty good. I will generally go and keep these a little lower. One of the things that in all flight simulators, I have a hard time seeing the green flight directors. Whether it's this airplane, microphone, sorry. Whether it's this airplane, the Phoenix, or the PMDG 737. From my view here, seeing the flight directors, I wish they were a little bit brighter. I don't know how and it could be that that's just the way it is in these airplanes. I don't know. Now that we're off the coast and in our flight, I'm slowly coming out here and I'm gonna zoom this out a bit. One of the things that I also like with this map is it shows me boundaries for ATC boundaries. So this is a boundary, I believe, for New York or approach or something, but it does, as you zoom it out, you're gonna start to see ATC boundaries, and that's really, really helpful. Especially in, if you know that you're coming into a super duper congested area, like London, Germany, those sorts of places, on VATSIM. Passing 30,000 feet, life is good here. Life is good here. Back to performance. 96 miles out. Fuel prediction page, 2.2. Okay, so we're getting a little bit close. What was that number again that we're supposed to, I call it the fuel freakout number. The fuel freakout number is 1.9. So as we get closer to 1.9, now you can see that our alternate is yellow. So that's not enough to get to the alternate. Here's the deal. We're still in climb, and the estimated fuel on board numbers are going to change. So the fuel freakout number is not a number that I'm going to freak out about until I'm at climb and established in cruise. Once we're out of climb and into cruise mode and we've hit a waypoint, if that number is still going down, then it's probably a good time to start being worried. Right now, it's just something that's good to keep an eye on. And we're doing pretty good out over the water. We're flying down the Florida coast here. So we're just passing the Vero Beach area of Florida. I know nothing about Florida except that Disney World and Harry Potter Land is there, and they have alligators. It's also where Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas were on Miami Vice. That's what I know about Florida. Okay, everything else is good. 1416. Life is good here. We can always go to our next phase. Managed. Oh, look at this. It's now giving us top of descent. We're now 113 miles from top of descent. We're 99 miles from top of climb. This is going to be one of those get to your top of climb and start your descent. So if you're in that kind of a situation, now is the time to go and start getting mentally ready. And again, these are short flights. This is how you practice getting good at this stuff. Edit. We're going to delete. We're not going back to Orlando. So we're going to go ahead and just have the charts that I need. So RNAV, we are going to Zutun. And at Cuddly, we want to be at 2,000 feet. That is going to be our initial descent. So now we know about that. Do we have minimums? We do, 328 feet on a VNAV. So all of this is good. We're good to go there. I'm going to come back out here. Slide this out of the way. And we got the latest METAR right here. So we know that the altimeter is 3011, winds are 210 at 6, ceiling and visibility wide open. So we're going to be able to do a nice little visual approach. I still will set a navigate approach in the computer. You know, in the flight instruments here, either an ILS or an RNAV, because this is going to give me an additional point of reference for our descent and landing, and that's really important as we get ready to land. I'm sitting here at home. I've got a computer screen in front of me, and it's flat. So your depth perception that you have between, you know, sitting in the cockpit and looking down there is not like in the real world. Okay, it's different in a sim. You hear real world pilots talk about how it's different in the sim all the time. It really is. And because we don't have the real world depth perception and actually can see where that runway is with the kind of depth that you need in the real world, having an additional level of guidance in here, whether it's an ILS or an RNAV or something, just kind of is that one little extra thing that a sim pilot needs. And in fact, Mike Ray, in his professional, you know, simulator pilot check ride manual that he wrote, said, even if the instructor on your sim ride tells you to do just a garden variety visual approach, if you have the opportunity, the time to just go in and set an ILS in there, it's going to give you that additional point of reference in your simulated cockpit to be able to make that landing better. And that's the important thing to do. Okay, everything else is looking great out here. We got a nice view up. We're about ready to start our turn away from the coastline. So see you later, Florida. Off to the Bahamas. I do have this cabin view here. So I've got this one here, and you can see that it's kind of got, this cabin view is a little bit messed up here. So the shell is not looking around. And if you've kind of gone around and looked around the airplane, you know, if we come here, we come back here, you can see the cabin isn't modeled. Now it's great, you know, part of not modeling the cabin on your airplane is it gives you better frame rates and stuff. On the other hand, sim pilots love our wing views, so, you know, that's an important thing to have too. Coming up on our final cruise, there is our top of climb hockey stick, and if you look at the very top of my map, there is our top of descent hockey stick. This is the 80-mile range, so we got a little bit of cruise time to do, but not much. I hope your flight is going well, and being able to fly along like this has been helpful for you. Being able to sit and watch a complete flight like this while you are flying along with somebody is the way that you learn these complex airplanes in Flight Simulator and stuff. So hopefully, you know, you've been able to fly along, and the buttons that I was pushing help you push the buttons that you're doing. Now would probably be a great opportunity to mention that I do live streaming over on Twitch. They are all group flights. We depart at 1900 Zulu, which is about 2 p.m. Eastern time in the U.S. That's our departure time. We're flying all over the world. Mostly it's MiG jets, but occasionally, you know, we hop in the Cessna or also the de Havilland Twin Otter and stuff. There's a Discord page that you can do flight suggestions. Practically every flight that we do over on Twitch is a group flight suggested by people flying along. And if you're looking for a good place to go, especially if you're new and want to ask questions, you know, some live streams aren't really good for people asking, you know, new to the sim questions. You don't have to worry. You can answer. We'll answer questions. So don't need to worry. We are now in cruise mode. We are 65 miles out. Estimated fuel on board is now bounced back to 2.8. Life is good there. Let's look at fuel prediction. We're still a little bit low in fuel of our Ultranet. So that's a little concerning, but I don't think that's a big bad deal at all.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, for the flight deck, your captain speaking. We've just reached our cruising altitude for the flight. As it begins to settle in, I do want to remind you to please keep your feet and elbows clear from the aisle, as the flight attendants will be coming through the cabin with galley carts shortly. Also, one more reminder to please refrain from congregating to the front galley where the flight deck door is located. Thank you.
Again, you could turn off the announcements. I just as soon sit here and mock them. Okay, so we already know, we checked, so we're at flight level 390, top of descent's coming on in. Let's go ahead and remind ourselves, what is it? The altitude is 2,000 feet. So we're gonna go ahead and set this in here now. Remember, the A320 does not descend on itself, you've gotta do it, but we can at least put that 2,000 feet in right now. Let's also come on over here and take a quick look. There is the latest data. Let's go out of this page and into the page. The MYNN, this is 1400 Zulu, is the latest report that we got. It's 1424, that's the correct. So winds are 210 at 6, and it wants destination data. So clear, performance, next phase, landing. What's the altimeter? The altimeter is 3011. 3011. Okay, now we're going to come over here, and our temperature is 25 degrees. So temperature is 25. Whoops, I put it in the wrong box. Temperature. And then the winds again are 210 at 6. 210 at 06, not 96, 06. There we go. Okay, over on the approach chart, it will tell us transition level here is at flight level 180. That's preset. And minimums for us are going to be 328 feet in the barrel box. So 3 to 8. And we're set. We're ready to go. Let's go back over to main performance. We're 41 miles from top of descent. And now we get to sit and chill and drink coffee or any other beverage that you might want to bring aboard your simulated cockpit. If we were on VATSIM, we would be changing radios and stuff like that. If you are looking for a new toy to get for your simulated cockpit, one of the things that was given to me for Christmas is a great peripheral, and I'm going to show it to you now. Now, SPAD.next is what I use as an interface between the simulator and my hardware controllers that I have, but it's also how it is that I am able to use this. This is the Logitech Flight Simulator radio panel. I think it's like $125 US at Amazon. This is probably the best gift that I've gotten. Well, the rudder pedals and were a nice gift too. I don't want to not say. But that being said, if you're on a VATSIM flight, having something like this is a piece of hardware. It's sitting on the table right there. So I can go and I can change it. See how my frequency is changing over on the standby? You can change it so much easier. So when we're getting bapped around by ATC in the middle of across the pond and we're busy doing 100 other things, it is so incredibly nice. That's one of the best things to have in your simulated cockpit. Absolutely out freaking standing. And I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. I really like that. So everything's good to go up here. Our lights are good. Seatbelts are off. Now it does give us a estimated time of descent. So we're 24 miles away, and it says we're going to do our descent at about 1430 Zulu. It's 1427, so now be about the time that the pilots are going to say things like, hey, from the flight deck, we're about ready to start our descent into Nassau. Anybody have to take a, anybody needs to do some last little bits of business in the lavatories? Now's your chance. Because we'll have to turn on the seatbelt sign in about another 10 minutes. This is kind of, this is where the pilots are doing the math. to figure out, hey, it's 10 minutes before descent, time to make the announcement. Everything's looking good here. Our little hockey stick is showing up. Fuel is great. We're still holding at 2.8 estimated fuel on board for landing. That means if we have to go around, we've got enough fuel to go around. Now, on a VATSIM event, I up my contingency fuel and reserves a little bit. So for cross the pond, I usually add an extra hour. Now, the real world pilots aren't going to be adding that kind of fuel, because I'm going to do that on cross the pond, because we're jamming a lot more airplanes into the simulated airspace than the airports and the airspace in the real world are designed for. They're trying to get as many people as they can in to participate in the event. So that means we're going to probably have to do a larger number of holds and delays and vectors and sitting on the ground. And so that's why I board an extra hour worth of contingency fuel. I will also kick my taxi fuel up a little bit too, which reminds me, there's an important number coming up here on Cross the Pond. And that's this number here. It's tee-off fuel. Has nothing to do with your golf game. But if you're on Cross the Pond and there is a lot of airplanes, 5-10 airplanes ahead of you, before you push those throttles forward, at some point you should have checked your tee-off fuel to make sure that you have more than that. If you have less than that, then you're not taking off with the amount of fuel that you need to make the flight. And we are 2 miles away from top of descent. When the 2 changes to 1, that's when I will come up here and make a manage descent button press. And so we have pressed the button, and that means we're starting our descent. Now, the thing we're going to keep an eye on is that little green dot right there. Now, that's not your green dot speed. Green dot is over here, and that has to do with your speed for flap retraction. This is, I believe, some of them call it the donut. And eventually, as you're starting your descent, this thing should start to pick up.
From the flight deck, ladies and gentlemen, as you may have noticed, we have begun our initial descent down to our destination. Now would be a good time to wrap up any business you need to take care of as we prepare for our approach. If you are up, once you return to your seat, we ask that you remain seated until the aircraft arrives safely at the gate. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for arrival.
So this is what I call the squiggly. There is an official name for it, but squiggly sounds more fun. This is the point on our descent. So as we're going along here, right now, if you look over at this, you can see that little green dot is buried down here. The squiggly shows when we are going to intercept our descent path. And so once we get to the descent path, the squiggly goes away, and that green dot should be centered up. Now, if we wanted to descend a little bit faster, we could throw out a notch of speed brakes. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy 1 click of my speed brakes, and you can see we're descending even faster, 4,000 feet per minute. Ah, look at this. Now all of a sudden the donut is now starting to move up here to the center. So we're starting to catch up with our descent path. And as soon as we do, the squiggly goes away, and that way we all know that our descent is where we need to be in the sky. So once that thing centers up there, I'm going to go and put my speed brakes away. There we are, we centered up, squiggly went away. I'm going to go and put speed brakes back down, and life is great. Now might be a good time. I don't think we're going to need another round of speed brakes. You might, but this is usually about the point in time that I'm going to set arm speed brakes and auto brakes. I think that's a little bit soon to do that. The real world pilots might do that a little bit later in the process. I get as much done as I can now, because especially on a VATSIM event, we get busy. And when we get busy, you know, it's great to have those sorts of things done. This is the other nice thing about the way the Airbus is set up on the descent. You can see right now we have thrust idle. This is a thrust idle descent. The airplane is just a thrust idle descent. We are using the least amount of fuel, putting out the least amount of pollution, least wear and tear on the engines. This is as good as it can be. And it's even better with the new LEAP engines here. These are really high quality engines for flying. So if you care about the environment, you care about saving fuel, flying a Neo is the thing for you. We're coming in on our approach. I'm going to go ahead and take it. Oh, I thought I had it on airport mode. Usually after we get out of the SID, I will go to airport mode. I forgot this time. But then when we start to come in on the approach, I will go back to constraints for our descent. And we're still looking good here. Still looking good up here. We're passing 28,000 feet. And now it looks like we need a little bit of thrust here. So it says speed, then thrust idle. So just add a little bit of touch of thrust to keep us at our optimum descent rate. Another thing that you need to be doing regularly in Airbuses, particularly the older bus, is this little gauge here. Accumulator brake pressure. And if you're going to start doing one engine taxis, that's an important gauge to check out. Because in an Airbus, I think you do a one engine taxi with the engine number 1 turned on. Well, the thing is engine number 2 is what supplies the hydraulic pressure to your brakes. Eek! What does that mean? It just means in the older school Airbuses, you're going to use... Okay, how do I... Come on. There we go. You're going to use the electric pump. The electric hydraulic pump on the yellow system or engine number 2. That's what gets you hydraulic pressure to your brakes. Now, from what I've been told over, when flying this with people who know more about this than I do, in the new Neo airplanes, that's automatic. We don't have to do that. The older Airbuses, you do need to come up here and hit that yellow electric hydraulic pump. And the way to check is your accumulator brake pressure. If you've got brake pressure, if you've got accumulator brake pressure, it's in the green zone, that means you got brakes and that means you can stop. There are so many cool things to learn about this airplane. Up, 24,000 feet. This is usually when I do seatbelts. There's seatbelts. And you can see our flight, things are really kind of coming together here. So all of this looks really good. So there is a final descent hockey stick right here, 2,000 feet as we go in for our landing. There is a green hockey stick that is in the opposite direction. This tells us when we're going to get to the point when we're to our selected altitude. So that's sort of the, over in a Boeing, that you could call that the banana line, maybe. And you can see that these two match pretty closely. So it's managing our descent very, very well. If we were on VATSIM, I believe that we are now getting TCAS data. So if there were other airplanes, you would see other airplanes. Traffic Collision Avoidance System is TCAS. That's where you see other airplanes on your map. So if we were on VATSIM, and I believe if we were in multiplayer in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it will also show the multiplayer airplanes too now. So that's kind of an interesting new thing going on. As we're coming in on an event like this, one of the things that I'll be doing is I'm going to go ahead and turn off the flight tracking for a second. I'm going to look at the airport, remind myself that runway 32 is 10,000 feet of runway. That's a great runway. I'm going to go ahead and I'm hoping to exit on the Echo taxiway here. That is a right turn. I'm kind of briefing myself and saying, okay, after on the runway, right turn off the runway. That's really helpful, especially on VATSIM when they've got 15 other airplanes stacked up behind you. And then after we get there, there's Echo to Hotel, and we'll come on in here to Apron 2, grab ourselves the jetway. So if you start planning ahead like this right now, it really does make your life better. I'm also going to make sure my charts are set up the way I like them. I'm going to go over here. And then the last thing I'll do as I'm briefing myself is missed approach, especially on across the pond. There is a chance that you will go around. And a missed approach is climbing right 2000 direct to Zooten and hold. Okay. And this is actually the way that I will leave that. With that done, I'm going to hit the little airplane button again. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Slide this right off to the monitor on the right. So it's right there. And that's really all I need. If we were on VATSIM, I would also have vPilot set up, which is a great way to be able to go and grab the ATIS. Altimeter reset. What's our altimeter? 3011. So 3011 on this. I verify the first officer. And 3011, so hit standard button. And 3011 there. Altimeters are set. See, this is what I really like about this airplane. It flashes at you. As opposed to the Boeing, it just changes color. If I see something flashing at me, it says, you need to do this. And I wish that Boeing would flash at you. I wish they had flashers at Boeing. Yes, that's the way my brain works, sorry. And you can see that we are actually, when you change the altimeter, expect to be off that flight path a little, your descent path a bit, but the airplane's usually going to catch up. We are also, I'm going to go ahead and click the map to the 40-mile range now. I'm going to slowly start crunching it in to get ready for landing. And everything else is good. As we're coming in and getting closer and closer, expect the ATC to start wanting you to make changes to your speed. Right now, we're doing a very, very gentle, very, very nice VNAV descent, and it's really pretty good. But you need to be ready to speed up and slow down, especially on the big events. I was turning the power off on. This is mission critical stuff. If you're going to be doing flight sim, especially if you're live streaming, a cup that keeps your coffee hot for long periods of time. Absolutely mission critical. Especially if you've got an old broadcaster's voice like mine that goes out on you pretty badly. Okay, we're a little bit low on the descent right now. So the airplane's a little low on the descent. I don't think that that's a huge problem. There's no constraints. But my guess is it's time for us to start taking control of our speed. So now we're going to take it out of managed speed. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reduce this. We're still at 12,000 feet, but we're getting it a little bit closer. And I would expect that ATC is going to start to want us to slow it down. And so be ready to do those sorts of things, you know. Slam on the brakes. Okay, that looks a little weird to me. Well, maybe not. Zatuni and then Cuddly and Dillop. Let's just make sure that our flight plan is correct. Uh-oh, it's frozen. So when it freezes like that, just kind of wait. Don't be pushing a lot of buttons there. That's it loading in some scenery. It's got a flight plan. Curry, Zooten, Cuddly, Dillop, and the runway. Okay, it's fine. You can easily confuse yourself. I do that all the time. So that was actually the scenery loading in. And so sometimes your sim just stops. And the worst thing you can do is start pushing buttons and clicking on the screen and everything else. Just wait till it picks up and catches up with you. Otherwise, that seems to, you know, guarantee me a crash to desktop. Now you can see also with my speed reduction, it also, the descent path went from the top all the way to the bottom. And in fact, it doesn't look like we're catching up. So let's go ahead, and we're getting close. We're within 20 miles of the airport. I would like to be at 210. That's when I can start throwing out some flaps. That does help me control my speed a little bit. We may need some speed brake here to not only help us slow down, but get our descent back where it needs to be. We're also coming up on 20 miles, so now's a good chance to go to 20 miles on the map. And there we are. We can go ahead and do our first notch of flaps. There is Nassau, and we're starting our turnaround here. There's 210. As it holds 210, it should increase my rate of descent a little bit. And as it increases my rate of descent, then we're going to get caught up. We're going to catch up right here at 15 miles. So we're going to be where we want to be, but I believe on some RNAV approaches, maybe all of them, you can actually use the approach button. You do not activate the ILS system, but you can use the approach to help you with your descent. It's a beautiful day. This is going to be a nice little visual approach. So there we go. So a little bit of speed brakes up. Let's see, my speed brakes are up just a bit here as we try and make sure that we get closer. Now, we got a couple of 90-degree turns here. And so usually this is about the point when ATC is going to slow us down to 180. And that will probably also tell you to maintain 180 until about 5 miles from the runway. So that's something to expect. Almost time for another notch of flaps. If you've got a cabin view or something like that, it's always nice to go outside. And if you can, go out and watch your flaps. I've still got a little speed brake going here. We're still going to make 2,000 feet at Cuddly, so we're still good for our landing. And the other thing to do is if you can, if you've got time, and you're coming into an airport that you haven't been to before, the cool part about Microsoft Flight Simulator is you get to look out the window, and the scenery is so awesome. Every now and then I will tell the story of, so when I'm not live streaming or, it's a day off, or it's nice for me to go and watch some of the real world videos that some people will do, when they take their iPhone and just put it in the window for the whole flight. Those are kind of nice every now and then. And one day I was watching a CRJ flight from San Francisco to Bozeman, Montana or something like that. And it was just, take off. The guy had the camera up the whole flight. And I just had that up on one of my computer monitors as I was doing stuff. And I looked over at that monitor as I was kind of walking by and thought, wow, that looks like Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I did, the connection got made in my brain. We've caught up with the squiggly here, so we can go ahead, put speed brakes away. If you use speed brakes, you are definitely going to need to rearm them. Anyway, the connection was made in my head, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, that's the real world. Microsoft Flight Simulator looks so much like the real world, and that's the cool part about this. You get to look out the window and say, holy moly, that's what it looks like. And that's what makes this so cool, especially if you're a travel geek like me, likes airplanes. Okay, everything's looking pretty good here. I'm going to go ahead, and since I have control of my own speed, I'm going to activate the approach mode. That way, when I'm ready to set up for landing, I have to hit one button, and the airplane is guaranteed to be ready for me. Passing 5,000 feet, and there's the airport. All set and ready for our landing. Time for one last click of the map. Let's see, do we get up 10,000 feet? Forgot my landing lights. Pre-arm the nose light. 10,000 foot cabin call. I usually try and do those at 10,000 feet. Oops. And we're about ready to make a turn here. for our landing. On your approaches with a big bad event like Cross the Pond coming up, expect a controller to do a lot of little direct twos. So if you get a chance, have a look at your flight plan and be at least relatively familiar with JPOD, JUNIP, let's see, ZQA. Just if you've got that in the back of your mind, if all of that is set up for you, that way you just know, they say direct JUNIP, you know that that's in your flight plan. I get lost sometimes if I don't do that. Also on Cross the Pond, you know, for Americans, we're going to be flying in Europe. For Europeans, you're going to be flying in America, okay, in the US. So pronunciations are different for all of us, so we need to be ready for that. And so if you know that, you know, you got a JIPOD and a JUNIP and it might sound a little different, that just, you're able to react to it a lot faster. Okay, making our base turn. Turn to base is what we're doing. If we were on VATSIM and there was no ATC, we would be announcing our intentions. And if you're new to this ATC thing and VATSIM, one of the things to do is think about, okay, if I were at this point and I had to announce intentions on 122.8, what would I say? Well, at this point, I would say something like Nassau traffic, United 441s and A320 turning base for the RNAV, runway 32, Nassau. That's what you would say. And if you start practicing that, you know how movie actors practice their lines before they turn on the camera? If you practice your lines before you key the microphone, that just makes you feel a little bit better. Okay, I think all is right with the world. I think the airplane's had far too much fun. The autopilot. So, is it time? AP is off. Captain's got the airplane. We're at 2,000 feet. We're looking good. We are about 10-mile finals. Let's start a gentle turn. There's our 2,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and just zero out our descent and start the turn. Your flight directors are your friends right now. So that kind of helps you make the turn. Am I turning enough? Am I turning too steep? Are we climbing? Are we descending? When it does this, sometimes it just won't shut up. Okay, I was a little bit off on my turn, so we're a little bit beyond. So we're gonna turn a little bit more and get back on that course. Roll it out.
2,500.
There's 2,500. We're supposed to be at 1,600, so we should probably do a little descent here. Do you see the runway? It's actually over here on the left. At this point, if you're all established here and you've got a second, this is now the good time to go over to your chart. And again, on Navigraph these days, you could also just come in and zoom in really, really tight on your airplane, and that's going to help you with. You can use the new. You can use the new maps. What are we doing? 7-mile finals. I think it's time for landing gear. Wheels would be a good idea.
Pilot Dance, please prepare for landing.
Okay, gear is down. We're coming up on 5-mile finals, so there's 5 miles, there's the runway, that's how I know. Flight directors are fairly centered up at the moment, so that's not bad. Okay, 5 mile finals, we can now do landing speed, so go to manage speed, and you can do, usually by now in this Airbus, you can do flaps 3. And now we just land. And again, you know, the flight directors are my friend. I will usually wait till we get close to that bugged speed and the letter F for flaps to go to full flaps. If you do full flaps too soon, the airplane's going to, you know, go up and down in a way that you don't want. There we go. There's the F. Flaps are full. You can even go out and look and see them. And did you see the view outside back there? I mean, wow, look at that. That looks so much, the
1,000.
Wow, does it look real? It's just amazing. If you get a chance, also check your ECAM checklist in the Airbus. That little green thing in the under the engine instruments there, that is also a great way to know, am I all ready to go? By doing short flights like this one, you know, a great thing to do is go back from here and just leave the airplane on the ground on VATSIM, plan a flight back to where you went to, or over to Miami, or over to Jackson. The whole point is you do several flights like this. This is how you get better at landing.
400. 100 above.
You want to be at 500 feet at the threshold of the runway.
300.
Gently
Minimum
landing.
200.
And of course, there's a tree right at the end of the runway.
100. 50.
Perfect.
40. Retard. 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 5.
Reversers is a little off to the side. I'm getting better. Little bit of reverse thrust. We don't need a ton. There we go. 60 knots. Auto brakes off too. Little bit of coasting. Oh my gosh, what a great looking airplane. And now we're coming up. There's that little high speed. We're looking for the Echo taxiway, which is coming up here. I slowed down a little bit. Well, if you have a sec, now's the time to do landing lights. I'm gonna do APU. I just did strobes. Might have been a little early. I usually leave my strobes on until I get off of the runway. And again, just like taxi out, we're at 20 knots. I want to be around 10 to make a turn. Unless there's a whole lot of airplanes behind me, and then I will do everything I can to get off of the runway as quickly as possible. And there is the Echo taxiway, just like we planned. It's real easy to also start over controlling. APU is up and running. Now is when I would have probably turned off my strobes. Look over here. Is anybody coming? Nope. Good. And there is our terminal. There's a really cool commuter terminal too. So you could do de Havilland Twin Otter operations over at that little commuter terminal that's just passing off of our wingtip there. You could also use it for CRJ operations too. So, and one of my favorite kinds of flying is island hopping. I don't know why, I just think that's the best fun for me. Speed brakes down, flaps up. One of the other things that scenery designers are now doing, I don't know if you can see it, but if you look over here, there's always a little elevation. The elevation is lower over here in between taxiways and all. That's for drainage. We now have incredible drainage stuff And that's you know, just better scenery design. You know, in Denver, that's where they push the snow. Okay, 90 degrees, around we go over here. And we were going to grab one of the gates over on this side. At this point, if we had a gate, I think we could have gone into GSX. And GSX, that would have given us some gate guidance going in. By the way, I don't know if you've seen the new Charlotte Douglas Airport from Flight Sim Dream Team. But there is really cool gate information for pilots that is going to be right in front of your airplane, which I think is really awesome. I think this one is going to give us, this is standard Microsoft Flight Simulator. So some gates, you know, they actually have people waiting for you. And you can actually see we're getting guidance going in on this one, which is nice. I always stomp on the brakes a little bit soon. And there we go. Parking brakes. The APU is up. So engine number 1, engine number 2. Come on up here. We should have turned off that nose light because we don't want to blind people. APU bleed. Beacon can go off. Seatbelts. Disarm the doors. I'm also going to do my fuel pumps. Fuel pumps are going off. They usually pop in your external power fairly quickly. And that's good too. Let's see if we're on VATSIM. I should have stopped squawking mode Charlie at the gate. Outside we go. Let's see if GSX is our friend. And it'll get us a jetway. Okay, I didn't go and get GSX here for this airport. So that's not going to work. That's okay. You could come over here to the little truck. And if you do jet bridge, that'll get your jet bridge there. You could also do your cargo doors if you want to. And here comes a jet bridge, and life is just perfect. And success. The last thing to do is take a look at your landing rate monitor, see how we did. Landing rate was, let's see, I had 2 landing rates. I wonder what that one. I had 400 and 209. I wonder what that is. Don't understand that one. I don't recall doing a bounce, so I don't recall bouncing. But we did it. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was arrested. So success here. I hope some of this helped you out a little bit. I hope it was fun and you learned a little bit more about the fly-by-wire. It's free and it's so easy to use. I really think a lot of this airplane. As I always like to say about my YouTube videos, this is not about the right way versus the wrong way. Mostly what I'm trying to do here is help people who are new for Flight Simulator come on in and fly some of these complex jets. So again, not the right way versus the wrong way. This is what I've found that works for me. I'm still really new here on YouTube. I read all the questions and comments, and I can't wait to hear what it is that you have to say. If you're a real-world pilot and I did something wrong, please put it in the comments. I want to do it the right way. Also, I want to say give a big invitation. Come join us for the Spy Flight on Twitch. We are flying as a group Tuesday through Sunday at 1900 Zulu. You are 100% welcome. If you did like what it is that you saw, I'm also on Patreon. Links in the description below. I do a daily flight briefing. Every day that we fly, I do a daily flight briefing over there. And I would certainly appreciate the support over there, as this is how it is that I pay the bills now. Thanks for flying with me. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoy this airplane. The best part is this airplane is free. And I will look forward to seeing you in the friendly sim skies again soon here on YouTube and even sooner on Twitch. At this point, I always like to say, stay healthy, stay safe, and happy landings.